So every week we talk about some different ways to be able to grow your business, and we're kind of on the heels right now of talking about owning rental property in Texas and different ways to be able to buy that rental property, especially in today's market. So for me, I like to think of a lot of the things that I do in real estate investing visually. So I'll go and pop up kind of my visual interpretation of all the things that I need to do as a real estate investor to be able to understand kind of my processes. So I know this is an eye chart, so I'll break down some of the sections. So tonight we're going to work on the finding a property side. There's also the property management side, some of the lease forms and some of the legal stuff, as well as your ultimate exit. So as we go through that tonight, I'm going to go ahead and work on the finding a property side. So for us, what we look for pardon me, what we look for in our rental property, there's always a discussion around appreciation versus cash flow. For me personally, I look to my rental properties to be able to make me rich. I look at the 11 other strategies that I use to be able to build income for myself or cash flow for myself, only because of where we live here in Texas. As I mentioned in our earlier segment, cash flow in Austin is a little bit of an oxymoron, unless you put down a humongous down payment. So unless you put maybe a 40%, 50% down payment, are you going to be able to make that cash flow happen because of those diminishing marginal returns that you typically get on rent versus what you get as the property goes up in value. So in order to pick the right properties, and for us, we've created something we call a heat map, which basically shows, and I'll tell you guys, I'm a licensed realtor and broker in the great state of Texas, license number 0518223. I'm not your realtor. I've disclosed, don't sue me. Are we good now? Yes, okay, good. So what I've done is I've taken all of the data out of the MLS to build what I call a heat map. And basically what that looks like is it says this is the direction that the values are going and doubling and doubling and doubling. And the way that I kind of describe it is like you're in this very hot center, which is sort of, you'll call that downtown Austin. And is that downtown hot core, that hot center where the values are really high, have we seen it bust over into other areas and grow? For example, from downtown Austin into East Austin. We already had seen it in West Austin. We had seen it in Hyde Park, and then we saw it kind of grow from there. So the way that I visually describe it, I almost think of it like as kind of popcorn popping out and growing in value, but it's like it gets really hot in the core, and then it pops over. So it's like, yep. So in Austin, the way that our heat map shows up, it's kind of like a blob from the center, blob from center of Austin. Anyone in here from Dallas, from the Dallas area? So that market is more like a V, right, coming out from downtown. And the Houston market, anybody here from the Houston area or know that Houston market, right? For them, it grows out west, out I-10 and up north, up 45 to get to the Woodlands. I think everyone's just trying to get away from the hurricanes. San Antonio, it's based all around the Riverwalk. So for us, we want to be right outside of that next hottest area, because what we find is the next thing that we'll see is that going in that direction. So if it is in the path of development, those are the properties that we look at, because those are the ones that are going up in value. Those are the ones that are appreciating. So we've taken all the data out of the MLSs to be able to tell which area, which direction those property values are growing, and we typically will invest right outside of it, because if you're looking at an area that's where you're finding property that's 600,000 right from the get-go, you want to be right next to that area where properties are maybe only 350, 400,000, and you know it's going in that direction. For us, we use for those of you guys who are not real estate agents, even for those of you guys who are real estate agents, rentometer.com is a very quick way to figure out what the values of the rents are. You can still, and I highly recommend jumping into the MLS or having someone jump into the MLS to be able to tell you exactly what they are. But if you want a 2-second review of your property, Rentometer is the fastest way to be able to do that. Realtor CMAs for those actual rents, and Realtor CMAs for those actual values of properties as well. I know a lot of new investors, when they are sort of an island and they don't yet have a great realtor on their power team, sometimes they're using, what are you guys using to get values of properties? Zillow. How many realtors in the room? Just curious. When someone says to you, well, Zillow says, what do you think? Oh, great, another newbie, right? So just in case you guys are thinking about using Zillow, remember that about, I think it was almost a year and a half ago, what did Zillow announce? Zillow announced that they were going to stop flipping houses. Why?
Because they're not making money.
Because they were losing money at it. Because they were using the Zillow Z-estimate. Okay, so if Zillow can't make money off of their own numbers, what does that tell you guys you should or should not do when it comes to Zillow? Yes, please don't use their numbers. Please work with a realtor to be able to get that. After you identify that property, and I see one of the big mistakes that I see a lot of new investors make is they will buy property where there's a lot of other what? A lot of other rental properties. Why? What's the thought process? I want to buy properties where all the rental properties are. What's the thought process?
It's a good area.
It's a good area. What? Somebody else said something over here. It's where the renters are. Okay. Have you ever watched the show? We watch it every Christmas. It's a Wonderful Life. Yeah. Okay. There were 2 bankers in that movie. There was Potter, he was the evil banker, and there was George, right? He was the good banker. What was George trying to create? A neighborhood of homeowners. What was Potter trying to create? Neighborhoods full of renters. In Potter's reality, right, it was a slum. In George's reality, it was a prosperous community. Have you guys driven through some of these communities where all of the renters are? What's the condition of these houses? Terrible. Crap. Not good. What does that tell you is going to be the value of those properties? Are they going to be going up? Are they going to be staying pretty stagnant, right? Maybe just growing with rent. So for you guys, do the renters want to be where the other renters are? No. Where do they want to be where the people are who are taking good care of their houses, where there's lower crime, and typically there's lower crime when you're surrounded by other homeowners, right? So I think one of the most important criteria is, like, for me, I want to be the only rental property on the street. I want to be the only rental property within a few blocks. I want to be the person who's pulling down the curve in that neighborhood, the appreciation curve in that neighborhood. I don't want all of these other rental properties around me pulling down the curve for me, right? I want to be lifted up by all of the owner occupants that are there. Also want you guys to consider your down payment. So there's significant considerations here. If you're just getting started, one of your big thought, and especially if this is all that you are doing, you will be very focused on making sure you have a property that cash flows, right? There are different sayings. If it doesn't cash flow, it's got to go. If you want cash flow, you have to go low, so those lower end properties. But the issue is your cash flow will get eaten up immediately. So how many of you guys who have rental properties have been surprised by, oh wow, the air conditioner's out and it looks like I'm going to need to spend $7,000 to go and repair that, right? Or some other issue. So some of those, I think what you'll find over time is a lot of that cash flow sounds really good on paper, right? Looks really wonderful on your fantastic spreadsheets. And I know you guys, especially my left brainers in the room, probably have some wonderful spreadsheets, but the truth is you'll have more vacancies than than you ever thought you would have. You'll have more repairs than you ever thought you would have. And those things do add up over time and pull from your cash flow. If you put too much down, then you're under leverage, which means you buy fewer properties, but you have better cash flow, which is what a lot of people will initially, as they're getting started, focus on. But what you'll find is if you get in a situation like we have been in the last 5 years where property values have doubled, right? Then you, instead of saying, wow, I'm so happy that I have that one property that was, cash flowing at, $200, $300, $400 a month. But if I would have divided my down payment, then I would have had 2 properties that doubled in value, which would have made all of that cash flow feel what? Very insignificant, very insignificant. Now, I can say this because for us, we live in an area that has had a solid increase in values. And for us, we live in an area that has a very consistent increase in values. So in California, it feels more like you're on a ride at Disney in terms of watching the values go kind of up and down like that, right? Versus in Texas, it's just kind of been pretty slow and pretty steady and pretty, moving at a really nice pace. Something to consider. So sometimes you will maximize or put a lot more money down than maybe you should. For me, I want to put as little as possible down, right? And for me, if it doesn't cash flow, then I'm okay with property not cash flowing because I'm going to be getting income using the 11 other strategies that I use to invest in real estate. And that gives me the ability to buy more of these properties and watch all of them go up in value. So I see a lot of new investors who will say, well, I want rental property, and they'll buy one for cash, right? And they're saying, like, I'm doing well, I get all this positive cash flow. Well, instead of just putting 100% down, going all cash on that properties, instead, if you would have bought 4 properties, and if you would have bought those 4 properties 5 years ago, right? What would you have seen the value of your properties go up? You would have had 4 or 5 properties, right, going up and doubling in value, which is one of the things that would really be create a drastic difference in terms of your overall net worth. So your financing options. So a lot of people, as they get started, when they're buying, they want to buy in their company name, right, because their lawyer told them or some attorney said, you should buy everything in an LLC. You get great asset protection. That's true, but when you go to your banker and you tell them that you want to buy an LLC, what are they going to tell you? What are they going to tell you your interest rate is? Just add a point, right? Add a point to your interest rate. Oh, and by the way, you're also going to have to sign what? A personal guarantee. So all of the benefit that you thought you were getting by buying it in your LLC very quickly goes away. So what I might suggest to you guys is you buy it in your own name, finance it in your own name, and basically after you close, you can transfer it to one of your own LLCs. Okay? So then you get all of that protection, but you're going in with that lower interest rate. Another option is cash buy, but you don't get any leverage. Another option for financing is buy with owner financing or buy subject to the existing financing. So owner financing becomes really, really popular when does owner financing become very in style, in vogue? High interest rates, yeah.
The property's free and clear.
The property's free and clear, yeah. What else? When sales start to slow down and you get motivated sellers. So I did a search going back to see how many properties sold in the MLS, where in the agent remarks it said owner financing or seller financing. There were about 3 a year ago. We were in a very different market a year ago than we are today. If you look in there today, there's probably, and I last looked was probably about 2 months ago, there were about 15. My guess is today there's probably 25. Why? Because sales have started to slow down. As sales slow down, people look for other options, other ways to be able to sell their properties. How many of you guys are familiar with the art of buying subject to? How many guys are familiar with the art of buying subject to? Okay, I see a couple of you guys. So this is my absolute favorite way to buy every property I buy, no matter what my exit strategy is. Effectively, you're taking over the payments of the seller's existing loan. The deed transfers to you, but you'll be the one who's making the payments going forward. You get to keep all that equity. You get to keep all that appreciation. There's more options than that, but I would say a 5th option is, how many of you guys have a 401k? How How many of you guys have a 401k? How many of you guys have a self-directed IRA, which is basically a 401k that got loosened from employment, right? And you can use it to invest on your own. Do you guys know where we're at tonight? We're at Quest Trust, they're a self-directed IRA company. So for us, we own rental properties in our self-directed IRA. So that's another cool strategy that you can use. So if you had a 401k, if you had some separation of employment, you can roll it over into a self-directed IRA and be able to invest in that self-directed IRA. Now, there's one little caveat. What's the little caveat? It's not income, right? It just goes to build out your retirement. So we have a couple of rental properties in our self-directed IRA that is just going to build out our retirement. Other cool things you can do with a self-directed IRA, you can give loans to for me, I give loans to other real estate investors in my self-directed IRA. You can join syndications using money in your self-directed IRA and invest in multifamily opportunities or other commercial opportunities with other investors. So there are lots of cool things you can do when it comes to financing options. Your cash flow. Obviously that's important as you're just getting started, especially if this is the only strategy that you are using. But you do have to take into account the fact that there will be vacancies, there will be maintenance, there will be repairs, there will be utilities when it's vacant, and the other box should be twice as big as it is now, because these are the things that surprise you and punch you in the face as you own rental property. And sometimes those could be trees falling down, those could be tenants that you have to evict and have to hire attorneys for that. So do be ready for that. This is a reality of being a real estate investor and holding rental property. Insurance considerations. I will say that the biggest mistake that I see investors make on insurance policies is they try to put a homeowner policy on a renter's policy. Why do they do that? It's cheaper. It's cheaper. But when they find out that it's not really your homestead, right? Or they'll put a rental policy on something that should be a builder's risk policy, on something that might be a buy, fix, and flip. So it's cheaper, right? So you might save, $500, but in the long run, if something happens at the property, they're going to say, "I'm sorry, you're uninsured." In fact, one of my colleagues recently, on her first flip, put it on the market. It was her birthday. She was so stoked. She got it on the MLS. That day, it burnt down to the ground. Luckily, she had the right kind of insurance. I was almost hesitant to ask her, right? Like, you had a builder's risk policy, right? But she said she did, so that makes me really happy. Now, if you're holding rental property, and even just anything in your business, for some of you guys will want to get more insured. I'm one of those people. So what that looks like for you guys is an umbrella policy on you or your company. There are special insurance considerations when you're buying subject to as well. We'll talk about that more at some of our additional trainings in terms of understanding that process. Setting up your bank accounts, having a separate account for your rents from your deposits as well. The folks that will grease the skids for you as a real estate investor who are buying and selling rental property or owning rental property, gosh, you had to have a great property manager. And listen, any realtor can put a property on the MLS and get it leased for you. But what's the problem? Do they know everything? The Texas property code, especially when it comes to leasing, is really detailed, and there are a lot of gotchas in there. So just be careful who you get to lease your property. Make sure that it is someone who is like more of a certified property manager, someone who does that for a living, as opposed to someone who helps people buy and sell and is just doing this for you as a friend. Just because they are a realtor does not mean that they are an expert at the intricacies of rental properties. So the last time I looked, the TREC contract to be able to purchase a property, 11 pages long. The TAR contract for a 1-year lease is about 18 pages long. You would think that would be just the opposite, but in truth, there are many more complexities actually when it comes to leasing. So make sure you get a great property manager. Obviously, insurance agent, contractor, handyman. The handyman will save you on some of the things that obviously they can do as opposed to having a contractor or a licensed electrician, plumber, all those different things when it's just coming out to screw in a light bulb. A landlord attorney. So for us, we have an attorney that we use that only works with landlords, meaning does not represent tenants, even though they understand the tenant law. I've gotten him to send several nasty grams to tenants that had gone a little rogue to be able to help them get back in line. I would recommend that if you guys get in a situation, don't try to play attorney and do it yourself. Get someone who can really be on your side. For those of you guys who are owning rental property, some of you guys, who are my people in here who go to Vegas and put $100 on Red 13? Who are my people in here? No one. No gamblers in the room. None of you guys. Okay. Who are my people who get into the room, go to Vegas and play like the 25-cent slot machines? It's okay. Okay, you. Okay, so really that's it? None of you guys go to Vegas. Oh, please. All right, so for you, I would say you would probably get a new LLC for every property that you own, because you are probably someone who is a little bit more risk averse, right? So for me, I'm not going to put $100 on Red 13 on the craps table, right? So the person who puts $100 on Red 13 on the crap table is willing to take on a lot more risk. So they'll put all of their properties, for example, in one LLC. For me, I'm going to get LLCs up to the point where I've got maybe $1 million worth of properties in there, and then I'm going to start a new LLC and get about $1 million worth of properties in there. So I'm playing, Pie Gal Poker. Who in here has played Pie Gal Poker? That is a fun game, because you can sit there and you can play all night and never be up more than 20 or down more than 20. But you're kind of like, I'm at a table. It's like I feel like I'm doing something here. But so in that case, your propensity or your propensity to take on risk will determine how many different LLCs that you get. Always recommend setting up QuickBooks. It makes it easy for your accountant to create that Schedule E for your tax returns. And I also want to say to, golly, this has probably been, I don't want to say the bane of my existence, but if you do not get a W-9 from your contractor before you give them a check, when do you think you'll get that W-9?
Never.
That would be never. That would be never. So, and many times you will be in these positions where it's like, well, just, I need the check now. I need the check now. It's like, don't do it. Don't do it. Always get the W-9 so that you can issue them a 1099. So any expense that you pay that's over $600, you will be required by IRS law to issue that 1099. Now, I will tell you that some contractors will give you a 1099, and then about 6 months later, you'll get a letter from the IRS that says what? That it's not valid. Okay, so you can tell the people in the room who've had some experience with this. It's like, and then what do you have to do? Then you have to go back to them and say, hey, can I get your valid Social Security number? And what do you think they're going to give you? Probably another invalid one, right? So in those cases, and if I can't get a good Social Security number, because I want to be able to write off that expense, and if I turn it in with that same incorrect number, I'm not going to be able to do that. So make sure that if that's the case, you may have to change out your contractors more often. A couple other things. And I think some of these things confuse people often. A lease survives a sale of a property. Okay, what does that mean? So if you buy a property that is already leased, you are inheriting that lease. You're not just going to be able to kick them out at your whim, right? So do be aware of that. Now, cash for keys is completely acceptable, and sometimes that's all you need to be able to take that property, renovate it, do whatever you may decide to happen. Trek was kind enough in, I want to say in 2021, as they updated all of the contracts, to add a new addendum for leases. So they actually put it on page 1 of the contract, which basically asks the question, is this property leased? If it is leased, then I want you to fill out another addendum so that we know what the terms are of that lease, and there are extra things that the seller has to provide as a result of that. Repairs, so as you guys are looking at what kind of repairs you should do, remember you're not going to live there, so be sure to repair up to the level that the other properties are at, and don't overdo it, because it's going to break your heart when you walk in there. And I guess I'll tell you the quote. I'll tell you this quote. You guys got to tell me who said it. Wow, my tenant left the property in better condition when they left than when they moved in. Said no one. Ever, right? So your heart will be broken if you spend a lot on some of those projects, and you find later that it doesn't work, meaning it didn't survive. So guys, I want to make sure that you check out, so this is the end of our tips and tricks for this week.